My name's Howard Gardner and I'm an artist working in Chester. This technique came about, I'd just done a course in black and white photography, and for many years I just didn't use colour at all afterwards. I just concentrated on monochrome and just looking at form. It's actually done using technical drawing pens and making thousands and thousands of dots and cross-hatching and just building up textures. And they were originally had this idea, developed it to try and, I was trying to emulate the old black and white photographs that are hand tinted, sort of thing your parents would have, so I really love those. So this is actually one that's the first one I did, and this one is an enlargement of a very small part of that, so you can just see. This was drawn more or less dot from dot, so you can see how it's how progressive. It's actually a very long-winded process, and frankly can be boring at times. And I have been told that anybody that draws with a technique like this has got to be a bit of a control freak, so I'm still thinking about that one. A couple of people have mentioned that I ought to try and find a way to automate it. And I have thought about it, and that would just be so perfect. If I could say, right, I want a piece this big and I want this many dots in it, I want the dots this big. But I haven't found a way of doing it yet, so until such time I do, I am that machine. These, again, I'm never going to be the kind of artist that can just rattle something off in about 5 minutes. So these, just like these, in a different way, they're just constructions. What I really like to do is I use the scale to emphasise and exaggerate a point. This one I particularly like. I like you doing something like this where the chair is actually 75% scale, and the screw is something like 1000% or something. That brings its own problems, of course, because what's really important is that you have to look at something when you're making it just to see exactly how it is made. So if you make a mistake with your measurements in the beginning, you can enlarge something into a big mistake. So the idea, I'm not really interested in producing that slavish exact replicas of things. There wouldn't be any point to that, but as I'm working, I'm always looking at things just to see, what makes a screw a screw, how does the thread work, things like that. So that's really what I like to do with those. The other one, this is another one I'm working on at the moment. It's my suggested biscuits. Same kind of thing applies. It's when I first started doing this, I naively thought that a digestive biscuit was one colour, single colour. And the lady in the paint shop kindly scanned it for me, scanned my biscuits. And of course, when she said, "This is the colour of your biscuit," I said, "Oh, it's not." So when you start looking at things, you see, like for a biscuit, there's several different shades of brown in there, so I had to reproduce that. Yeah, so basically, again, largely monochrome, but I'm starting to diversify and add, startling shades of brown now, as you can see. As far as I'm concerned, if you were to paint a vase of flowers and call it a vase of flowers, you've kind of missed an opportunity. Some things are so obvious they don't need to be stated. So what I try and do is, if I give it a title, I like it to work like a punchline in a joke, if you can. If you hear a good joke, when the punchline comes out, it explains the rest of the joke, and you get it. Okay, so and there's that delicious lapse when you haven't quite got it and you suddenly do get it. But if I can achieve that same thing, that's great. Of course, the other problem is that the downside of that is if you don't get the punchline, then it's just mystifying, but that's one of the risks you take. So, I mean, for example, this one is called Buddha is out of the office. And the reason being, quickly, is that when years ago, Buddha used to be illustrated by his absence, because you can't define Buddha, apparently. So he would be illustrated by a chair held aloft by a group of people, but there'd be nobody in the chair, but the space is what represents Buddha. So in this instance, somebody in the office chair, has tried to nail or screw Buddha down in this instance and failed. Okay, but really, the thing I think about titles, is just imagine this. Okay, you imagine Queen are in the studio, and they've just finished recording Bohemian Rhapsody. All right, and Freddie Mercury pours himself another glass of champagne, turns to Brian May and says, "Do you know what, Brian? I think we ought to call this one Mama Just Killed a Man." You know, you think how that song would be diminished if it had done that.